Welcome to this Angular HeatMap Chart tutorial. With this Syncfusion Angular HeatMap Chart component, you can turn two-dimensional data into easy-to-understand color patterns based on solid or gradient color options. Data points are rendered as heat map cells through scalable vector graphics or Canvas UI. In this video, I will demonstrate how to create an Angular app and add the Angular HeatMap Chart component to it. I will also explain how to add data points, axes, and color palettes, change dimensions, apply formatting, and enable tooltips. Let me start with the application creation process. I'm going to create an Angular application by making use of the Angular CLI tool. Make sure you have installed the latest version of Node.js. I will edit my code using Visual Studio Code and view the output in Google Chrome. To create a project in Angular, I open Visual Studio Code and install the Angular CLI using the command npm install -g at angular/CLI. I use the ng new project name command and name my project my Angular app. I am going to create a project with a CSS style sheet, so I choose the CSS option. The project creation has started. Now let me navigate to the project folder. To add the Syncfusion Angular HeatMap Chart component, I need to use the command npm install at syncfusion/ej2 Angular HeatMap --save. This will install the package along with its dependencies. The application is now ready to use. The first thing I must do here is register the trial license key to use Syncfusion components. So I open the main TS file and import the register license method from the Syncfusion ej2 base package. Using this method, I register the trial license key. For instructions on generating this license key, refer to the link in the description below. Now, the application is configured to use Syncfusion Angular components. Next, I navigate to the app component TS file and import the heat map module from the Syncfusion Angular HeatMap package. Then, I register it within the imports array of the component section. Now let me start adding the HeatMap Chart component to the application by opening the app component HTML file and removing its default content first. I add a HeatMap Chart component by adding an EJS heatmap tag. To visualize the HeatMap chart in the browser, I need to populate data in the chart. To do that, I define an array object called HeatMapData and assign values to it. This data source contains information about the sales revenue of the items sold by each employee in a week. I assign this object to the data source property of the heat map chart. Now I run this example using the command ng-serve to show the initial demo. You can see the heat map chart is rendered with the sales revenue, where the revenue for the day is displayed in thousands of US dollars in the cells. Here, each object in the data source is rendered in a column, and the other objects are rendered similarly. Next, let's see how to render the heat map chart with null values. Here, I modify the existing data source by adding null values in the data points. See, the default palettes are rendered for data points with null values. To add a title to the heat map chart, I define an object named TitleSettings and set the text as sales revenue per employee in thousands of US dollars. I then assign this object to the TitleSettings property of the heat map chart. Notice the heat map chart now renders with a title. Let's see how to set the X and Y axis labels in a heat map chart. You can set three types of axis: category, numeric, and date time. In this example, I am going to add the category axis. I define an array variable named x-axis and add the appropriate string values to the labels property. Likewise, I define an array named y-axis and add the appropriate values to the labels property. I then assign this variable to the x-axis and y-axis properties of the heat map chart. The heat map chart is now rendered with the category labels in the x and y axes. Data points representing the data source values can be displayed with gradient or fixed colors. To customize the palette colors with the gradient type, I define an object named palette settings and add the palette property with custom colors for the heat map. Then I set the type as gradient. I assign this palette settings variable to the palette settings property of the heat map chart. See the heat map chart now, it is rendered with the gradient palette type. In the fixed palette type, solid colors are applied to the heat map cells. To use the fixed palette type, I change the type property to fixed. The heat map chart is now rendered with a fixed palette. Next, let me show you how to set dimensions for the heat map chart. I can specify a dimension in pixels or as a percentage. Here, I set the height to 350 pixels and the width to 750 pixels. I add styles like margin to align the component. The heat map chart is now rendered based on the specified dimensions. Next, I will show you how to format values in the heat map chart cells. I define an object named cell settings, and within it, I set the format to the $ value. Here, value represents the heat map cell value. Then I assign this cell settings variable to the cell settings property of the heat map. The $ symbol is added to the heat map cell data. Next, let's see how to make the heat map chart interactive by enabling tooltips. To do that, I need to import the tooltip service module from the Syncfusion Angular HeatMap package and register it in the provider's array of the component section. Then I set the show tooltip property to true. See, when I hover over the heat map chart, it displays a tooltip for the data. Let's conclude this video. I have shown you how to create an Angular app and add the Syncfusion Angular HeatMap Chart component to it with a few basic features such as adding data points, axes, and color palettes, changing dimensions, apply formatting, and enable tooltips. You can download the example used in this video from the GitHub link in the video description. I have also provided a link to see if you qualify for a free license key to use our Angular components through our community license. If you found this video useful, please like and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.